With the latest chapter of Black Clover, things once again for the most part progress as expected as Asta's devil training continued. Last we left off, Nacht had just transformed by coming together with one of his devils, and now this version of Nacht stands before Asta. From here, declaring that the two must now undergo a similar process, allowing Asta to then access and use the full extent of his devil's anti-magic capabilities, as immediately from beneath them would form a shadowy eruption of hands that would grip and constrict them. However, in the face of this issue, Liebe would grant Asta his power, allowing the two to break free from its clutches. But from the looks of it, Asta was the only one to properly emerge, now in the state we typically expect from his use of the devil powers. However, Liebe was in fact there, albeit in a different form, as apparently in providing Asta with his power, he had shrunken down to a more chibi size, sort of giving reasoning to the adorable visages of Nacht's devilish collection. The design is pretty comical, and in knowing that he's already so short, it's pretty funny. But conceptually, I love the whole devil on the shoulder thing. I think it's pretty clever. Nacht would then go on to explain the difference between their current states, as with his means of binding, the devil and its power are subservient to him entirely. But this of course isn't the case with Asta and his devil. That rather than proper union, Asta is merely soaking up the power of Liebe that is leaking out. And Asta, in realizing that he's heard something of the same sort from Liebe before, would consult his new partner, who was apparently clueless as well. Furthermore, going on to say that all those times in the past, he was just trying to take over Asta's body, and that their fight but moments ago was his first proper one in ages. From there, the two would begin to bicker over their now shared incompetence, as Nacht would declare that they'll just have to figure it out through combat as a circle of shadows begins to form beneath his feet. As Nacht would explain that he can use the power of each of his devils upon joining with them, and that this was Gimodello and his ability Pack. As for a lack of better words, a whole pack of shadow clones would emerge. All of them appeared to have canine features, and one would swiftly move behind Asta, who would then guard and assume a defensive stance against the horde. And all of them would now lash out, hitting the ground as he just barely dodged out of the way. Unrelenting, they'd force him on his back, even being unafraid to grip his sword. As Asta would now realize that in regards to ki, they are all identical to Nacht. Nacht then saying that they won't disappear unless his main body is stopped. But with them all possessing the same ki, it is certainly a tall order and easy for Nacht to hide amongst. And Asta, in the midst of battle, would think to himself about how Nacht has multiple devils, and how much the man has probably been through on account of that fact alone. And I am in the same boat. That is pretty remarkable and just goes to show the sort of person that this is. A normal person would have had difficulty with one devil, yet this guy has 4. And in thinking back to when he met up with the captains of the Clover Kingdom, he sort of dismissed his former self when Jack had brought it up in relation to him being Captain Yami's vice captain, going as far as to say that that man doesn't exist anymore. But in relation to himself, Asta, because his bond with Liebe had improved, is certain that there's more in store for them in regard to their combined power. Nacht then saying that this was the path Asta chose by not binding his devil into servitude, as otherwise he would have had full control over his devil's full power immediately, and so now he needs to stand by his decision and defeat Nacht. Asta would then summon Captain Yami's katana and agree to the challenge, then saying that he would certainly surpass his limits. And for some reason, maybe on account of an emotional or social quirk, Nacht twitched in this moment, and Asta immediately took a swipe in that direction, now referring to the blade as a demon decapitator. A newfound excitement would beam from him, and he would then reinforce the need to surpass his limits and save Captain Yami. And let me just say, Demon Decapitator? That is such a cool name. And with that, it seems like our previous question of what's to come from this blade in the hands of Asta has been partially answered, as it looks to be more of a long-range tool, sending strikes over a distance in blackened anti-magic. which is visually rather similar to how Captain Yami used it himself. Very nice. However, Nacht was not amused by the words of Asta here at all. And if I were to throw out a Hail Mary, a random wild guess with a clear lack of evidential support, I'd say that Nacht likely has a tendency to say he hates things that probably would have aligned with the sentiments of his previous self, a sort of resentment for his prior naivete. And I'd have to thoroughly look back on all the instances of this to provide more accuracy, but it is a guess after all. Now, this chapter was rather action-oriented, and so it, like a lot of other Black Clover chapters lately, just seemed to fly by before I even knew it. And really, this approach to Asta's training is certainly a change of pace, and I mean that even beyond the fact of it including his devil. I'm just glad that we're actually able to see it. Typically, a time skip of some sort comes around and everyone is suddenly boosted, but this time we are getting proper details and associated visuals. But with that being said, I highly doubt the same will be the case for our other cast members. But understandably so, as that would probably just unnecessarily bog down the story and remove the enticing mystery aspect of it all. But if we're on the subject, besides Asta, I'm waiting to see what my favorite character Noelle is capable of after training with the elves. On top of being a weeb, I am a dungeon master, and so my brain is just full of Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy lore in general. And so the concept of her water-based abilities meeting the ancient fluidity of elven form is just so very exciting to me. There are just so many possibilities, and the stakes are high here for everyone, as the Triad member that she's actually after killed her mother. And so I really have to commend this mangaka, because as opposed to just forcing the escalation of power on the basis of purely just new and more powerful threats, he adds an equal amount of emotional stakes that really make each and every arc feel gut-wrenching. So many questions have remained unanswered for so long, and plenty more persist, but the way they're all provided to us is always remarkable and different from the last. Truly an incredible body of work here. But what do you think about all this, and how was the chapter to you? I think Nacht's current form is really cool. I love the ability, and I'm actually hoping to see what the other ones are capable of, because if they're all different, I can only imagine the sort of tactical approach this man may employ at any given point. And if you'd like to be here for further discussions in regards to that sort of thing and what have you, anything from Black Clover at this point, I only ask that you guys keep coming through with the support you've shown thus far for our Black Clover content up until now. We've been expanding beyond My Hero Academia lately, as you may have noticed, and so the way you guys have shown up for us has been amazing, and we really appreciate it. So if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell for notifications. And if you'd like to go above and beyond in the line of duty for the plot army, please consider supporting us over on Patreon, where you'll have access to a whole slew of benefits and help us continue to bring you bigger and better content. Because when it comes to bringing you some of the best Black Clover content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I am Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching, and have an awesome day. I love you.